This video was made possible with the help of Game Toppers. Upgrade your gaming experience with a Game Topper. In this day and age, everybody collects something, whether it be bottle tops from bottles, teeth from their children, merchandise from Game of Thrones, board games. If only we had a big place to put them all in. Yeah. This is museum, where you're collecting things from all over the world and you're placing them in your museum, hopefully in a nice order, and you're trying to please your Patreon, who's kindly given you permission to use their building to store all this stuff. Now, this is the first in-house game published by Holy Grail because the co-owner designed the game along with his historical buddy, and they have produced a masterpiece. It's a masterpiece because it should be in a gallery, because it's Vincent Dutré who has done all the art on all the 180 individual different cards, which are the objects that you're going to be filling your museum with. And so this game looks magical from the outset when it's laid out on the table, due to the fact that Vincent has done his cake and he's put lots of super icing on it with a nice little cherry. Talking about that, you're going to need a big table to place this game on. It does take up a lot of space with all the different boards. You don't just have your player board, which is a double-sided map of your layout of your museum, but you also have the continents board, where all the continents and objects that you're going to find. You're going to have the expert board. You're also going to have a place for all the cards that you draw. And if you're playing with any of the expansions, you're going to need space for them as well. Now, this is a big game, but it's a simple, small idea. It's set collecting, it's card drafting, it's economy building, and it's also a puzzle tile laying puzzle. The rules are very simple and straightforward. On an active player's turn, they will get to draft a card from the center pool and add it to their hand. Other players may have the possibility to draft as well, but at the expense of giving the active player a prestige point. So you have this already a dilemma in place. You know, do you take a card and give that player an extra point, or do you wait until your turn and hopefully that card is still there? Then the active player has a choice of two actions. The first action, they can just fill up their museum with objects from their hand, and they do this by paying the cost, by kind of discarding another object of a value higher or more, or several objects, into their warehouse just to put this one into their museum. And at the same time, they will score themselves points, which everybody can see. Or if they choose to, they can just clean out their warehouse, all their discard cards from their discard pile, and place them back into their hand. And that's it. Simple rules for a simple game. And very, very, very much a set collecting game in the vein of Ticket to Ride or New York 1901 or even Royals. It's simple, but this game has an extra element to make it a bit more kind of for the experienced gamer, but at the same time, simple enough for families to pick up. I'm going to go into depth now about everything in the base game. I haven't played with the expansions or the Kickstarter exclusive stuff. It's just the base game. I've played it several times, and spoiler, Game of Thrones is finished. No, spoiler, I like this game. So as I said earlier, you got the drafting. As I said, it gives a dilemma for players to think about on their turn. Do they draw a card giving the active player a point? This is very powerful in a 4-player game. It's not so meaningful in a 2-player game. A 2-player game, you know, you could just wait. You're not going to give them a point. Yeah. Unless there is a card that you want. You see that these objects come in values from 1 to 5, 5 being the most expensive. And that's good. If you can put a 5 into your museum, it gives you 5 points plus a prestige point because these items and artifacts are masterpieces. But then again, you could just pick up one of these masterpieces and then use it to place 5 objects in your museum on your turn of the value of 1. Now I'm going to talk quite a bit about the differences between playing with 4 players and playing with 2 players because the game does have a different feel due to the fact that with 4 players you're going to get through a lot more cards than you will with 2 players. And this will change your strategy depending on what cards are actually on the table in front of you, and also depending on what your Patreon wants. Now at the beginning of the game, everyone's going to be dealt a small hand of Patreon cards. Now these are like bonus points and bonus scoring mechanisms for the end of the game. You'll select one of them and keep it. But the thing is, a lot of these cards are very similar. You're either going to be collecting nothing but Roman artifacts, or you're going to be collecting nothing but Polynesian artifacts. So it's just going to be a set collection of color. Now there is quite a lot of Patreon cards in there, but you know, there is still the chance that you've been dealt at the beginning of the game 3 cards which are identical. You're just collecting all of one of the sets. And then choosing one of those sets, it can be disastrous, especially in a 2-player game, because the cards don't cycle. And so maybe your civilization doesn't come out at all due to the fact that each of the zones in the game, each of the continents, has a big deck of cards as well. And you're not going to get through all of those cards in a game with a 2-player. You won't even get through all of these cards in a 4-player game. So that gives you a big chunk of replayability just there because there's so many cards in the game. So yeah, choosing a Patreon can be ups and downs depending on the number of players. And again, you have this visible and hidden scoring during the course of the game, and this is something that I really like in games because, you know, seeing a visual score gives people the incentive to try and get a bit further because maybe they've got nothing good in their hand for bonus scoring. And there is a lot of end game scoring in this game, which adds to the fun of the surprise of the winner. But talking about scoring, every time you score, you're going to advance the track, and actually you're going to advance or cut short the time of the game because the game will end when one player crosses the 50-point mark. So you might be encouraged to get to that mark quickly because one, it gives you a flavor card every time that you get 10 points, and I'll go through flavor cards with you a bit later. But also, it just gives you this, I don't want to give the other players a chance to achieve their objectives. I just want to race past the line and get a lot of points because I've already got my objective sorted. So you've got this decision of, should I fill up my museum quickly or slowly? Now you're not just going to be set collecting civilizations. There's also domains as well. Each card has 4 pieces of information on it. There is the value, there is the civilization, there is the domain, and there's also a bit of information about the history of the object. Now sometimes some of these colors and some of these names are a little bit too close, and I've played games where players have been collecting the wrong card in conjunction with their Patreon. They thought it was the Polynesians, but it actually was the Philatians. The Philatians? Because they have similar names and they have similar colors. They're both different shades of blue. And it's not just these 2 colors, there's China and India which get mixed up due to the fact that they are in the same continent, basically. Now, when you're playing a 2-player game, you're going to do a lot more of the second action on your turn than the first action because you're just going to be playing cards into your museum. After a couple of rounds, you'll have no cards, depending on whether you picked any cards up on the drafting section or not. And so you're going to be drawing everything back from your warehouse a lot more than you will in a 4-player game. In a 4-player game, there's a lot more going on and you've got a lot more opportunity to fill up your hand. So you're a bit more reluctant to do the second action of taking everything from your warehouse, but it is a useful action, and sometimes timing that at the right moment can be very important, because not only can players place objects in their museum from their hand, they can also buy stuff from your warehouse, which, you know, yeah, it gives you a prestige point, but it might be something that they need for their collection, and something that, you know, is going to give them extra scoring. So yes, you've got this scoring which is done through the course of the game, but then you've got the end of game scoring, which will rely on your collection and how big it is for each of your civilizations that you have. So there's more than one way to play. You can try and aim for your Patreon, or you can avoid your Patreon totally and do your own thing and just build up bonus points from placing lots of items in your museum from different civilizations or from different domains to give you super big scores. You are going to have to be watchful, and you are going to have to, you know, interact a bit. The interaction between players is not very heavy, but as I said, you're going to be scurrying and looking through other people's warehouses to see if there's something which you could probably add to your own, you know, showroom to give you that boost. Also, at the end of the game, you have this chance to rearrange your museum and score extra bonus points that way as well, because the only way you're going to get these civilizations and these domain points is basically if everything is arranged in your museum in a way that all the rooms adjacent are touching each other. So if you have the Roman stuff here, and then you have some Greek stuff in the middle, and then you have some more Roman stuff over there, they don't count as one big block. And that's the same for the domains, obviously. So having this end of game chance to move stuff around is fun. Now you can make this game harder by using the second map on the back of each player board. Basically, it's all the 25 rooms, so it's a 5x5 grid, but they're not all connected. They're all connected in different ways. Now this, I would advise for expert players, and if you're playing with your family, if you put your kids on the simple side and you put yourself on the hard side, which kind of like balances the game out quite nicely. Because again, you're going to get bonus points for filling your museum. If you manage to fill the main halls, which are the colored spaces, with one type of domain or civilization, you get bonus points. If you manage to fill the whole museum, all 25 spaces, you get bonus points. And if you do both, you get even more bonus points. So that's another thing to aim for. Now, I've never seen a museum fully filled, because the way people have played, and that's the way it is. You know, out of all the games that I've played, players have not aimed for that, because the game is a kind of a race, and it's knowing when to do that final sprint, as I said, to get the 50 points and bring the game to an end. Now, another little thing that you can change in the game to make it harder or easier is the public opinion cards. You can add these to each of the continent decks in different amounts. I suggest just chucking them all in. It makes the game so much more fun. These cards will give negative points to players who have certain cards of certain continents in their warehouse. Obviously, there's going to be a large effect depending on the number of players. At the end of a 4-player game, there's going to be a lot more public opinion cards, and they will punch and sting quite a bit. Whereas in a 2-player game, they're just like cat scratches. This is due to the fact, as I said, cards don't cycle as much in a 2-player game. So let's talk about some of the other bits and pieces in the game. Number 1, there's a deck of expert cards, which again, people can buy. Again, you're spending your objects and putting them into your warehouse, but these experts will come into your domain, and they will give you extra points at the end of the game. It's light, it's fluffy, it adds a bit of strategy, but again, it's a case of waiting for the right card to come through. You know, you might be waiting for the Greek expert to pop up because you're doing a Greek collection and there's not a lot of Greek cards coming out, you know, but should you buy it? Again, you could just buy them all and then just base your collections around your experts that you picked up. Then you have your flavor cards. These are just random, kind of like take that cards, but they're nice take that cards. That's what they are. They just give a player a one-up on the other players on a certain thing. They may just give you a bunch of prestige points, or they may just block public opinion tokens from affecting you at the end of the game. They feel random and a bit maybe a bit unbalanced, but they don't change the game that much. And again, it depends on how people are scoring. During the course of the game, you may get to play 6 cards due to the fact that you're going to get 1 card given to you every 10 points, and you start with 1 card. Then there are the headline cards, which will change like a globalization on a round. You may find that there's an embargo on a certain continent, which means that players can't take any more items from that continent. Or there may be extra items in another continent, so there might be 3 available every turn instead of 1. There are also some other ones which will allow, you know, the cost of hiring experts a bit cheaper, or they may just add a public opinion token. Again, there's a nice selection, and you won't get through them all. Luck of the draw. I mean, I've played one game where it was just a case of there was an embargo, there's an embargo, there's an embargo, and all of a sudden, I don't know, maybe I didn't shuffle the deck correctly. So there you have a lot of customization, randomization more than customization. The customization comes from the 2 maps and also the public opinion cards, but you have a lot of randomization due to the fact that you've got all these different decks. The 4 different continent decks, the flavored deck, the headline deck, and the expert deck. And so every game is going to feel a little bit different, although it is basically the same. So it's more of a case of your strategy is going to be a bit different every time you play, because you've got your patrons as well. And that's basically the game. I haven't played with the expansions, as I've said, so I can't give you a generalization about them, but in time when I do play with them, I will let you know. So let's wrap things up. Technical review. Technically, this game is a stellar piece of work. It can be a little bit noisy because of all the colors on all the boards and everything, and all the cards. Again, the continent board, sometimes you can't see the cards and you can't count them correctly due to the fact that, as I said, there's a lot of brilliant colors. But it all looks beautiful. The components are really nice. The cards are a bizarre kind of plastified. They're not cards like normal cards, which is a bit strange, but at the moment they seem to have survived a hell of a lot of shuffling and a hell of a lot of hands groping at them, so maybe it's a good thing. It all comes in a beautiful insert. You can sleeve these cards if you wanted to. There's enough space for sleeves. There's enough space for lots of stuff, even though there are all these boards. And I was a bit disappointed that the player boards were just thin pieces of cardboard, but at the end of the day, having 4 of them in the box as well would have made this thing heavy and probably a lot more expensive. The cardboard tokens are extremely chunky. In fact, I had a bit of trouble punching some of them out, but they didn't rip in the end. They were just very, very tough. But what can I say? Excellent artwork, excellent rule book. It explains everything. But this is a simple game, but it's laid out so nicely and friendly, with the appendices at the back, just explaining a lot of the powers of the character, the experts that you hire, and maybe highlighting things from the headline cards if you ever get stuck. This is a fantastic production, and therefore technically this is a 9.5 out of 10. You can't get much better. You could get much better, but it is nearly a 10. So let's move on to my BGG score. What do I think about this game? I told you I like it. I do like it. I think it's very good, and I would suggest playing it. This is my type of game. This is a set collecting card game. It looks amazing, and as I like that there is not just the set collection, but there's the puzzle element as well, where you're trying to lay out everything in a good order to create your museum and give you those big points, hopefully, if you're connecting your rooms correctly. This game offers enough challenge every time I play it because of the randomization of the cards. Sometimes it's like, yeah, this is quite easy. I can do my Patreon and get lots of points that way. Sometimes it's like, well, I can't do my Patreon, so I'm gonna have to find another way to get points, or the cards are not coming out. So there's always something for you to think about. There's another way to go around. And as I said, you can adapt the game for inexperienced players. You can make it harder for expert players, and it's gone down well every time I've played it. Yeah, this is an 8 out of 10. Some of the drawbacks are probably setup time because there's a lot of decks of cards to shuffle. But the game is very simple to explain, and there's, as I said, a lot of replayability, but sometimes that replayability can be washed against you due to the fact that I've had a few players a bit unhappy because they couldn't get what they wanted. But there's enough deepness in here for me to call this a good game. So my combined score, if you combine the technical and my personal score together, you get an 8.75. which should give you a good indication about this game. As I said, set collection, economy, puzzle solving, and drafting all squeezed into this one big box. It is on sale. You can buy this retail. It's not Kickstarter only now, so you can go to places like Philibert and get the game there. So there you have it. That's my review of Museum. If you found this video useful and it's pointed you in the direction whether this is a game for you or not, give this a like, a thumb up. Or if you know someone that might be interested in this game or might like the sound of my voice, you can always share this video with them. And for everything else board game related, and like reviews, board game music, board game podcast, you can go to boardgameseverybodyshould.com, where I now have a little team of reviewers writing reviews for lots of games which I can't possibly do on video because they take too long. So I'll say thank you very much for watching, ciao for now, and remember to please play nicely with each other. And if you have any spare change and you want to support what we do, you can go to our Patreon at boardgameseverybodyshould.com. Now enjoy this song.
Just sitting at the table next to Philibert.